for joining us. We are, again, going to just take about 15 minutes and talk about an integrity and ethics topic. And today's topic is actually going to be customer service. And I've already had somebody ask me, so what does customer service have to do with integrity and ethics? Mary, let me ask you to start us off. How do these two things fit together?
Okay. I'm going to start by talking about what we all probably think of as customer service and good customer service. It means that we're nice and courteous when we talk to people. But customer service really goes far beyond that to making sure we do the right things for our clients. It's not only being nice and courteous, it's doing the right things. It's working cases timely. It's working them correctly. And it's following through with things that we've told clients we're going to do and we're going to take care of. So for me, customer service is about doing the right thing, and doing the right thing is what integrity is about.
That makes total sense. You know, there is absolutely nothing, I know you've all lived with this, right? There's nothing more frustrating than when you are dealing with someone, you're trying to get something done, and somebody tells you, oh, I'll take care of it, and then you're expecting something and you don't get it. And so you call back and they say, oh, yes, we're working on it, and you'll get it on Friday. And Friday comes and goes, so you call back on Monday. Doesn't matter. I mean, you know, at that point, it really doesn't matter how nice the person is to you on the phone. You're just so frustrated that you're not getting what they're promising you. So you're right, Mary, there's two parts to it.
Well, and Cindy, I was going to say, so we handle the Facebook page for DHS, and a lot of people, when they get really frustrated because they've called and either the number just rings or it's busy, or they've talked to someone and someone never called them back, they end up messaging us on Facebook like at midnight and saying, you know, I've called 6 people and I still don't have an answer. All I need to know is how do I get my Medicaid to work. So we'll reach out to Robert Williams in DCO, and the cool thing about Robert is he will email the person who can fix it, but he CCs me so I can see it, and then that person will CC me when they fixed it, so I know that it's actually taken care of.
Mm-hmm. So Lori has a very interesting job here and does an amazing job with it. She is, when there are individuals, constituents, beneficiaries with a very particular problem, and they've made their way with their problem to the legislature, to the governor's office, to a congressional office, to a Senate office, any of those places, to my office. Lori is the person that takes that and handholds finding out what's going on and getting those situations resolved through the organization. So I think you might have some good insight on what customer service, why it actually matters when you're dealing with folks. Give us some real examples of what actually goes on around customer service that's separate from the front line. I'm working directly with someone.
Yeah, so just kind of to piggyback off of what Amy said, by the time the complaint reaches my level, the individual has gone to their state representative, their legislator, and they're pretty hostile at that point. They're pretty upset because they've placed the calls. The calls haven't been returned. They can't get the answers that they need in order to find out if they're eligible for services. So I think it's really, really important to communicate to them in a very professional manner. Sometimes those individuals that I speak with, again, they're very, very hostile. And so I think just a very kind, calm word. And let me just say this, don't take it personal. That individual on the other end of the line, they're angry. They're angry at the situation. They're not angry with you. So I think it's so important to do that. So whenever I receive the complaint or the inquiry from a legislator, the first thing that I do, I'm very, very blessed to work with some incredible divisions. Each one of you work within these divisions that I reference. and they're just, you're amazing folks for me to work with. So I contact you, I find out the answer, I'm in contact with the legislator to be able to provide the answer to them that they need, as well as their constituent. One more thing, there are times that a legislator just doesn't quite know who to contact for an issue, and they send those individuals to me. So recently I had one where a sweet elderly couple needed a birth certificate. So some of us may know that we don't do birth certificates. That's vital records, vital statistics with the Department of Health. So I could have easily just referred this elderly couple to the vital records. But instead of doing that, I took the time, because I knew that it mattered to them, I took the time to actually connect them with the right individual with vital records to help them get their issue resolved and get the birth certificate that they needed. And in the end, that made that legislator really, really happy.
And, Mary, could you talk about that a little bit? Because you all have been doing a good bit there to focus on that. We've talked sometimes about, there's nothing, again, back to frustrating, there's nothing, I just went through this recently with trying to get something repaired, nothing more frustrating than you call a call center and they say, oh, that's not what we do here. Call this number, or right. I'm going to transfer you to another number, and you get transferred to that number, and what happens? You sit there and you wait, and then somebody answers it, and they say, oh no, that's not me either. Let me transfer you over here. And you sit and you hold and you wait, and it's so frustrating, right? So that's part of what I know y'all have been working on at DCO.
Right. There is a lot to know about the Department of Human Services, and I don't think any one of us know everything that the department offers or how to do everything we do in this department, and that's okay. The most important thing is to keep yourself knowledgeable as you can about all the services that we offer, but most importantly, take ownership of every interaction that you have with the client. And that can be an internal client or an external client. But if you take ownership, if you don't know the answer, tell them we're going to find out the answer. If you give them someone to call and they're not able to connect, I know we're not all able to do warm transfers on our phones or have those advantages to help us connect people immediately. But when you have to give someone else someone to talk to, let them know they can call you back. Let them know if you don't reach this person, or if they haven't contacted you within so many days, feel free to call me back and I'll help get you connected, and we'll get through the process. I think that is probably the number one thing we can all do to improve customer service, to build the foundation on what we've already got. I mean, we help people every day. Don't mistake this. We do a good job. We help people every day. We authorize benefits. We take care of questions. But to take it to the next level, I think taking ownership is really important.
Well, and I had an example of that this week. My name's in the paper a lot, so when people don't know who else to call, they call or email me. And there was a family, they have a child in hospice care. So that's an urgent situation. And they had a Medicaid question that they couldn't get answered, and they reached out to me. And so I did that warm handoff via email. I found out who the right person was for this family and this hospice worker to talk to, did the warm handoff, and then I emailed them back and said, did you get your issue resolved? And they said, oh, yes, we did. Thank you very much. And that way I knew that family was taken care of.
It's one of those things. It is not just those of us who deal directly with the public, with beneficiaries. If you're working in one of the, here in central office, you may think this doesn't apply to you. Oh, it does. I mean, a lot of the things that we end up seeing where we failed with customer service are times where it's our back office operations that, an invoice comes in, for example, right? And the invoice isn't properly filled out. Does that invoice in some way go back with a clear explanation as to what is wrong so the person at the other end can get paid? Or is it just sent back or just ignored? I mean, we get situations very, very regularly where a provider is close to having to shut their doors, lay people off, take action, and it ends up being over a very small invoice issue that has been allowed to build and escalate for a period of time, right? Customer service, all the way along the line, because we are in partnership with those out there who are directly providing services. So it comes
That's right.
together. Amy, I know you all have been doing a good bit of work, and Mary and Lori and all across the organization, on how we talk with people, with the way with the notices we send, with all the different ways we communicate. You know, I have a 82-year-old mother who is very, very, very intelligent, and yet she will bring me letters she gets from government to say, what does this mean? What am I supposed to do? All right? You see that all the time.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about this need that we have and what y'all are up to help around this?
Yeah, so, you know, my office, we handle, you know, internal and external communications. And so for a while, we were focused on making sure, like, our press releases were really easy to understand, and our social media and emails that we sent out. But there became a point where, like, we were working with Arkansas Works, and there were the notices that were going to clients, and they were really complicated. And if they're complicated for me, and I know the program well, I talk to the media about it every day, then they certainly are complicated to the beneficiaries. So we actually did some plain language training with UMS, and really all plain language is speak to people in a regular voice. Don't use bureaucratic words. Don't use, you know,
Acronyms.
$5 words or acronyms. Use plain, simple language. Good example, I don't utilize something, I use it. That's just very easy. So we began to focus on how we are communicating to beneficiaries. And we're looking, and it's a long process for us, but we've been working to fix and update the letters in Arkansas Works, but we're also looking at other programs and interactions that we have with beneficiaries and families. And Marcy in my office gave me a good example. For TEFRA, families have to do a renewal packet every year, and they were having to download every single page separately of that packet. Well, that takes forever. So my folks put all the documents in one PDF. It took 10 minutes. Now they can just download one PDF and fill it out. That's a very simple fix, but it alleviates some frustration on the part of beneficiaries. And I know that there are a lot more things like that we can do as an agency to make things simpler for families.
And I wanted to just add to that and say, we know we have a long way to go in DCO around our notices and things like that. And I think it's important, if you see something, feel free to send it up and bring it to our attention, to Amy's or mine, because we don't see all the notices every day, and if you run across one that's just confusing, let us know, because as we begin working on our new eligibility system, that is work that we're going to do. And in the meantime, if there are things that are wrong, we want to work to correct them and just work to make the language more understandable. And that can be a challenge when we have all these rules we have to follow to properly notice people. But we're going to work really hard to try and communicate that in just regular tone of voice, instead of saying things like verification. We need proof. Looking for ways to just make the language more for an just everyday conversation.
And really, it's not just the notices and stuff, but in our processes, like a very good example, DCFS, the families that were applying to be foster families would get really frustrated because they were like, this process is taking forever. And we no one had laid out the process with a timeline for them that said, this is how long this will take, so at least they had an expectation of how long it would take. So we did a simple one-page graphic that was visual that said, okay, this takes this long, this takes this long. And now they send it to foster families, so foster families know it's going to take 5 or 6 months. Here's why, and here's where I am in the process. It was very simple for us to do, and it made a big difference.
Someone pointed out to us recently, along the same lines, they said if you have become involved with the child welfare system, And if you're a family, if you're a parent and your child has been taken, there is no single place to go to find out, well, what do I do? What all is going to happen? That it was for that parent. They were, of course, relying on the caseworker and the courts to tell them, but there was nowhere to go. So once somebody said that, it was like very obvious. We need to create a single place where they can go and get that information. And so they can know what's happening and know what to expect and what the process is going to be. I say that to say, as Mary said, think about, as you're doing your work daily, when you see things that you go, if that was me in this situation, what would I want?
Yeah.
You know, flow that up. Flow it up to your division director, flow it up to your chief, flow it up to my office, because otherwise we won't think of it. Director Jay Hill said something to me recently that has just stuck with me so much. He said he really tries over at the state hospital and at the health center, the state's nursing home, he talks to them a lot about just really try to always look at the person, the patient, the beneficiary, the person you're dealing with, and think, if that was my mother, if that was my sister, if that was my daughter or my son, and talk to them like that and treat them like that. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, that is customer service.
It is.
It is treating folks the way you want to be treated and trying to help them. That's what we're here for. Mm-hmm. And Mary's point was perfect at the beginning. That's what puts integrity in our system, is when we are acting with the interest of the folks we're serving. So,
yeah.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
No, I think that that's exactly right. And let me just add one more point. I think going back to the timelines, one of the biggest questions that I get asked over and over again by the time that individual gets to me is, how long is this going to take? And so I think it's really, really important that we do lay out those expectations and follow up. So I know going into this that it's going to take me about 2 or 3 days probably to be able to get some sort of response from the division. And so I tell the individual, give me a couple of days. And if I see after a couple of days the system that I design, it's going to alert me, and I'm going to know to call that individual just to follow up with them. So I think following up with our staff, with the people that we serve, is so important. It's vital to do that. It all goes back to having character and integrity.
And tell them the truth at the front about how long something is going to take.
Yeah.
That way you get rid of the frustration I talked about at the beginning of, well, you told me a week, it's now been 2, it's now been 3. If you know it's normally a 3-week process, while they may not want to hear that right up front, it is better to tell them right up front than to have them sitting out there feeling frustrated and angry.
Right.
So anyway, thank you all for joining us. We promised we'd keep these short, and thank you for all you do to serve the citizens of Arkansas. Bye-bye.